The dashboard clock glowed 12:17 a.m. as I left the last speck of town behind. My headlights carved two pale tunnels through the darkness, their beams swallowed by the thick trees pressing in from both sides. The map app showed a neat gray line labeled County Road 6, a shortcut that would shave 30 minutes off the drive to my brother's cabin. I'd taken a highway for years, but tonight I wanted speed over comfort. A mistake, though I didn't know it yet. The asphalt narrowed to a single lane almost immediately, the yellow center line fading like an old scar. Branches arched overhead, knitting together until they formed a tunnel of shifting black shapes. My high beams revealed flashes of pale bark and glistening leaves slick with dew. The smell of wet earth seeped through the vents, cold and metallic, carrying the sharp tang of pine sap. The radio lost signal within the first mile, leaving only the low hum of tires and the rhythmic sweep of wipers across a windshield misted with fog. At first, the isolation felt pleasant, like stepping into a forgotten piece of the world. I rolled the window down to breathe in the night air, the kind of crisp chill that belongs only to back roads and late autumn. The moon was a thin sickle behind drifting clouds. A few stars winked through gaps in the canopy. I tightened my grip on the wheel when the pavement changed texture, from smooth blacktop to a rougher, almost gravelly surface that crunched faintly beneath the tires. My phone buzzed with a weak vibration. A single notification from the navigation app flashed before the screen went black. No signal. I set it back on the passenger seat, telling myself there was no need to worry. The road was straight, the cabin only 20 miles away. Yet a knot of unease tightened in my stomach. A deer darted across the road, eyes flaring white in the headlights. I braked hard, heart hammering as it disappeared into the brush. The forest swallowed the sound instantly. I waited for the thump of retreating hooves, but none came. Only silence, thick and absolute, as if the trees themselves were listening. I exhaled, easing back onto the accelerator. 5 minutes later, I passed an old wooden sign, half hidden by vines. The paint was flaked and unreadable except for a single word: hollow. The letters were warped, the grain of the wood swollen from years of rain. I slowed instinctively, scanning for an intersecting road or driveway, but saw nothing except the endless ribbon of asphalt stretching ahead. A faint glow appeared in the rearview mirror. Headlights. Relief flickered, another driver. But as the light drew closer, I realized something was wrong. The beams were too high, almost level with my own eyes, yet they cast no reflection on the trees or the wet pavement. I tapped the brakes. The glow didn't change, didn't bob, or sway the way normal headlights do. It hovered at a fixed distance, neither gaining nor falling back. I pressed the accelerator. The engine responded with a throaty surge, but the light matched my speed perfectly. Sweat gathered at the base of my neck despite the chill. I flicked on the hazard lights, hoping to signal or startle whoever or whatever was behind me. The glow blinked once, perfectly in sync with my hazards, then steadied again. The road curved sharply to the left. I took it fast, half hoping the sudden angle would shake my pursuer. For a brief moment, the mirror showed only darkness. I let out a shaky breath. Then the glow reappeared ahead of me, floating above the road like a lantern held by invisible hands. I slammed the brakes, tires squealing on the damp surface. The silence that followed felt alive, a living pressure pushing against the glass. I sat motionless, engine idling, heart drumming in my ears. The night outside seemed to lean closer, each tree a silhouette of patient menace. I told myself it was a trick of fog and fatigue, nothing more. Still, I kept my foot hovering over the brake as I rolled forward. The pavement ended without warning. My front tires bumped on a hard-packed dirt, jarring the steering wheel. The forest opened into a narrow clearing where mist pooled like breath on cold glass. In the center stood an iron gate, tall and ornate, the kind you might see at the entrance of an old cemetery. Rust streaked the bars like dry blood. A chain hung loose across the middle, but the gate itself stood slightly ajar, inviting in a way that felt almost mocking. I should have turned around. Instead, I crept closer, drawn by a curiosity I couldn't name. The fog thickened, muffling the engine's growl until it sounded distant and dreamlike. I leaned out the window, searching for any sign of life, a house light, a mailbox, even another car. Nothing. Only the gate and the dirt road curling beyond it into deeper darkness. A sudden metallic clang shattered the stillness. I jerked upright as the gate swung wider, its hinges screaming like an animal in pain. No wind stirred the trees. No one stood beside it. The chain slid off by itself, links clattering onto the ground with a hollow finality. My instinct screamed to reverse, to flee back toward the main road, but some cold logic whispered that backing down the narrow dirt track in this fog could be even more dangerous. I tightened my grip on the wheel and nudged the accelerator. The truck crept forward through the open gate. The instant my rear tires cleared the threshold, the gate slammed shut behind me with a force that rattled the chassis. The sound echoed through the trees like a gunshot. The dirt road beyond was lined with skeletal birch trees, their white trunks glowing faintly in the headlights. The branches arched overhead, forming a tunnel that seemed to close in with every yard. My cell phone vibrated again on the passenger seat. I snatched it up, desperate for a signal, but the screen remained black except for a single line of text I had not seen before. Keep driving. The dirt road narrowed until the branches scraped against both sides of the truck, nails of bark and twigs screeching along the metal. I flinched at each scrape, imagining deep gouges in the paint, though I knew I'd never stop to check. The headlights cut through a wall of fog so dense it seemed to absorb the light rather than reflect it. Beyond the beams, the forest was an ocean of shifting gray where shapes formed and dissolved before my eyes. I gripped the wheel tighter, fighting the urge to speed. Every instinct told me that haste would only draw attention. The text on my phone still glowed, "Keep driving." I tossed it face down on the seat, unwilling to watch for another message. The screen pulsed faintly against the upholstery, as if alive. My breathing grew shallow. Each inhale carried the faint scent of wet earth mixed with something sour, a trace of rot that clung to the back of my throat. I cracked the window for fresh air and instantly regretted it. The smell outside was worse, an acrid blend of burnt rubber and stagnant water, like a swamp after a lightning strike. The road sloped downward, the truck's weight pulling faster despite my light touch on the brake. The grade steepened until my stomach lifted, as though I were descending into a hollow beneath the world. My headlights caught a flash of movement, a figure standing on the road ahead. I slammed the brake and skidded to a stop, tires spitting gravel. It was a man, or was something shaped like one. He stood perfectly still, back to me, dressed in a black coat that hung past his knees. The fog curled around him, never touching his outline, as if an invisible barrier kept it at bay. I hit the horn. The sound blasted through the clearing, sharp and sudden, but the figure didn't flinch. "Hey," my voice cracked. "Are you okay?" The man tilted his head slowly, like a puppet on a loose string, until I could see the pale curve of his cheek. Then he stepped sideways off the road and disappeared behind the trees without a sound. No crunch of gravel, no rustle of leaves. Just gone. I sat frozen for a full minute before easing back onto the accelerator. The tires rolled forward reluctantly, as though the truck itself resisted. My rearview mirror reflected only fog. I told myself it was a hunter, a drifter, anyone human. But the silence that followed was too complete, the kind that swallows excuses. The descent leveled into a wide bend where the forest opened into a hollow choked with mist. My high beams swept across a cluster of signs, weathered wooden boards nailed to crooked posts. Each sign carried a single word scrawled in flaking black paint: "Turn back." The letters bled down the grain like dried blood. I slowed but didn't stop. Something in me refused to obey commands from the void. The signs became more frantic as I drove past. Last chance. No return. Each step costs. Some boards were nailed upside down or backward, their warnings barely legible in the shifting fog. Then the engine coughed. Once. Twice. My stomach clenched as the dashboard lights flickered. The truck jerked forward, then died completely, plunging me into darkness so sudden it felt physical. I twisted the key. The starter clicked uselessly. My headlights dimmed and went out. For a moment, I sat in absolute black, heart pounding in my ears. The fog outside glowed faintly with its own pale luminescence, as if the night itself produced light. My phone buzzed again. Against every instinct, I picked it up. A new message filled the screen. Don't stop. I cursed and hit the ignition again. Nothing. I tried a third time, pumping the pedal. The engine roared back too, life with a violent shudder, headlights flaring like a defibrillator jolt. Gravel sprayed as I accelerated, half expecting the wheels to spin uselessly. Instead, the truck leapt forward as though shoved by an unseen force. The road tightened into another tunnel of birch trees. Their trunks flashed white in the beams, each one marked with a dark vertical slash. At first I thought it was shadow, but then I saw the wet sheen of sap bleeding from deep gouges. Claw marks, too high for any animal I knew. Some trunks bore 5 or 6 parallel slashes, each groove as wide as my palm. A soft tapping began on the roof of the cab. At first it was irregular, like small branches dropping in the breeze. Then it settled into a rhythm. 3 quick taps, a pause, 3 more. I looked up. The fog above the windshield glowed faintly, but nothing touched the metal. The tapping continued, precise as a metronome. I pressed harder on the accelerator. The road pitched upward, the engine straining against the climb. The tapping grew louder, closer, until it sounded like fingernails scraping the roof. My chest tightened. I reached for the phone, desperate for any sign of connection, and nearly veered off the road when another message appeared on the dark screen. It's above you. I jerked the wheel instinctively, scanning the mirror. A shadow slid across the rear window, long, jointed, insect-like. I caught a glimpse of something crouched on the roof, its outline blurred by fog, but undeniably massive. The truck swayed under its weight. Before terror could paralyze me completely, a piercing howl erupted from the woods. The sound vibrated through the metal frame, a deep resonance that made my teeth ache. Whatever clung to the roof leapt away with a screech of tearing metal. The truck lurched as the weight vanished. I caught a final flash of movement, a silhouette springing into the trees, limbs bending at impossible angles. The road crested the hill and opened onto a small plateau. My breath caught. In the center stood a house, or what remained of one. The structure leaned at a crooked angle, its walls sagging under decades of rot. A single window glowed faintly with a yellow light. I slowed despite every screaming instinct. The door swung inward before I even touched the brake. The plateau felt detached from the rest of the forest, as if I'd crossed a border into some quarantined pocket of earth. Gravel crunched under the tires while the truck idled in place. The yellow glow inside the house pulsed faintly, not steady like a bulb, but breathing, brightening and dimming in slow rhythm. My fingers hovered over the door handle before I realized what I was doing. Every sensible part of me screamed to reverse, to gun it back down the hill, but my body moved on its own. I killed the engine. The sudden silence pressed against my skull, a vacuum after the grinding climb. Fog wrapped the truck in a damp shroud. I opened the door. The hinges creaked loud enough to echo across the plateau, and the sound died instantly, as if swallowed by the air. The ground squelched beneath my boots, soft and spongy, like walking on soaked carpet. The smell of rot thickened with each step. I kept my eyes on the doorway where the light beckoned, though I couldn't shake the sense that countless eyes watched from the birch line. The trees stood perfectly still, no breeze to stir their branches, yet the slashed trunks seemed to lean closer when I looked away. The front steps sagged under my weight. I reached the threshold and froze. The door wasn't just open. It had been ripped off its hinges and set carefully to the side, as if someone, or something, wanted me to notice the care in the destruction. Inside, the glow came from a single lantern placed in the center of the floor. The room smelled of damp wood and old smoke. The walls bowed inward, wallpaper peeling in long curls like shed skin. Beneath the lantern lay a circle of dirt darker than the rest of the floor, as though fire had scorched it recently. I stepped closer and saw faint markings etched into the wood around the circle, symbols carved with obsessive precision. A soft hum vibrated through the air. It wasn't coming from the lantern. It came from below. I crouched and pressed my palm to the floorboards. The wood thrummed like the deck of a ship. The rhythm matched the breathing pulse of the lantern light. Something clattered upstairs. My head snapped toward the staircase at the far corner. The sound came again, a slow, deliberate footstep followed by a drag, like something heavy scraping across the floor. "Hello." My voice barely left my throat. The dragging stopped, silence deep enough to hurt. Then a new sound, a whisper, faint, almost gentle. My name. I stumbled backward, heart slamming against my ribs. The lantern flickered, casting sharp shadows that danced across the walls. One shadow didn't move with the others. A figure stood at the top of the stairs. I couldn't make out a face, only a silhouette taller than the doorframe. It leaned forward slightly, as if listening. The whisper came again, unmistakable now. "You shouldn't be here." Every muscle screamed to run, but my legs refused. The figure descended one step, then another. With each step, the boards groaned louder until the sound filled the room like a wailing siren. I stumbled toward the door, tripping over the threshold. Cold air slapped my face as I tumbled onto the plateau. I scrambled to my feet and bolted for the truck. Behind me, the groan of the stairs rose into a shriek of splintering wood. I didn't look back. The truck's headlights flared to life the moment I gripped the handle, though I hadn't touched the keys. The engine roared without the ignition. I dove inside and slammed the door. The moment it latched, a thunderous crash erupted from the house. Through the windshield, I saw the front wall bow outward, wood splintering like paper. A shadow surged toward the opening, vast and formless, before the lantern inside exploded in a burst of blinding white light. The plateau disappeared. One blink and the house, the trees, the fog, all of it vanished. I was suddenly on a paved highway, smooth and dry beneath the tires. The dashboard clock reading 12. My hands gripped the wheel, though I had no memory of starting the drive. The highway stretched straight and empty under a black sky. No stars, no moon, only the steady hum of the engine and the faint echo of that whisper clinging to the edges of my mind. My phone buzzed on the seat. I picked it up with shaking fingers. A new message filled the screen. "You took the back road." My stomach turned cold. I swiped the notification away, but another message appeared immediately. "You can never leave it." The truck shuddered violently. The horizon ahead rippled like heat, rising from asphalt. I eased off the accelerator, but the speedometer climbed on its own, 60, 70, 80. I slammed the brake. The pedals sank uselessly to the floor. The black sky above began to fracture, faint cracks of pale light spiderwebbing across the darkness. Through the cracks, I glimpsed glimpses of birch trees, the yellow glow of a lantern, the slashed trunks of the plateau. The world outside the windshield was folding in on itself, peeling back to reveal the forest I thought I'd escaped. My phone vibrated again, harder this time, skittering across the seat like a living thing. The screen flashed one final message before going black. "Turn around." The windshield warped as if the glass were softening in heat. Thin white fissures streaked across the night like lightning frozen in place. My knuckles whitened on the steering wheel. The hum of the engine turned into a deep vibration that rattled the fillings in my teeth. I felt the road surface changing beneath the tires, a subtle grain that didn't belong to asphalt, coarse and uneven like gravel buried just beneath the blacktop. The dashboard lights flickered and died. Darkness swallowed the cab except for the faint glow leaking through the spiderweb cracks in the sky. I leaned forward, squinting into the stretch of highway ahead. The center lines had vanished. The pavement was no longer pavement at all, but a pale dirt track bordered by birch trees. My headlights sputtered once and failed, yet I could still see everything as clearly as midday, lit by some sourceless silver glow. I eased off the accelerator again. The pedal hung loose, unconnected to anything. The engine continued to climb, a rising howl that came not from the truck, but from the ground itself. The steering wheel stiffened until it locked in place, forcing me forward. I twisted and yanked, but the truck refused to respond. The air inside thickened, heavy with the smell of wet leaves and burnt metal. My breath came shallow and fast. A low chant threaded through the engine noise. Many voices speaking a language I didn't know, each syllable sharp as broken glass. The cadence matched the pulse I'd felt in the plateau, the same rhythm that had hummed through the floorboards of the house. Shapes moved within the birch trees, tall silhouettes pacing the vehicle as it sped along the dirt track. They glided effortlessly, never breaking stride despite my increasing speed. Whenever I tried to focus on one, it blurred, dissolving into a smear of shadow, only to reform a few feet ahead. Something tapped the passenger side window. A single, deliberate knock. I jerked my head to the right. Nothing there, only fog sliding between the trunks. Then another knock, this time from the driver's side. Sharp, patient. Who's there? My voice cracked in the stale air. A third knock came from the roof directly above me. Slow, deliberate, like a finger tracing a warning into the metal. The chant outside rose in pitch, voices converging into a single wordless wail that drilled into my skull. The cracks in the sky widened. Through them, I saw the plateau again. The lantern glowing in its circle, the carved symbols, the slashed trees leaning closer. The image flickered like a faulty signal. Each time it appeared, the truck lurched as if the road were tilting toward that other world. My phone buzzed again. Against every instinct, I snatched it from the seat. The screen glowed with a new message. Stop fighting. No, you whispered. No, no, no. I hurled the phone into the footwell. It hit the floor with a dull clack, but the message remained seared into my vision like an afterimage. The truck began to slow, not because of anything I did, but as if the unseen force controlling it had decided the chase was over. The chanting stopped mid-note, leaving a silence so abrupt my ears rang. Ahead, the dirt track ended in a wide clearing bathed in that sourceless silver light. At the center of the clearing stood a single figure. It was tall and thin, dressed in a dark coat that rippled though there was no wind. Its head tilted in a way that suggested both curiosity and contempt. Where a face should have been, there was only a shifting smear of shadow, like smoke trapped behind glass. The truck rolled to a halt a few feet away. The engine cut off on its own. I sat frozen, heartbeat hammering in my throat. The door locks clicked open with a soft, inviting pop. The figure raised an arm, palm outward. The skin, if it was skin, glowed faintly like moonlight through thin paper. It beckoned once. A pressure built behind my eyes, a command without words. Step out. Leave the truck. Join the road. My hand twitched toward the handle. I clenched my fist until nails bit flesh. No, I said aloud, though the sound barely carried. The figure tilted its head farther, as if amused. Then it lowered its arm and slowly spread its fingers. The cracks in the sky flared white. A column of light shot downward, engulfing the clearing. The world tilted violently. I grabbed the steering wheel with both hands and held on. The light swallowed everything. The trees, the dirt track, the truck itself, until all that remained was a vast, colorless void. For a heartbeat, I floated weightless. Then the sensation of movement returned, not forward or backward, but inward, as if I were being drawn into the light itself. My thoughts scattered like leaves in a gale. Only one stubborn fragment of will remained: stay awake. I clung to that thought while the void folded around me. Somewhere in the distance, the hum returned, a single low note, steady as a heartbeat. The hum thickened until it felt like a physical substance, a heavy pressure that wrapped around my chest and slowed every breath. I gripped the steering wheel harder, even though the truck no longer existed beneath me. The wheel dissolved into a soft, luminous haze, but my fingers refused to let go, clutching at the memory of something solid. A horizon unfolded inside the void, a faint gray line that sharpened into a ribbon of cracked asphalt. The back road was back, but it floated in nothingness, suspended like a bridge across an infinite chasm. The silver glowed dim to a twilight blue that revealed just enough to keep me oriented. I stood on the asphalt, though I never felt my feet move from the truck. The transition was seamless, as if the world had redrawn itself around me without permission. A sign rose ahead, the kind you see on lonely county highways. Green metal, white letters, reflective paint catching a light that had no source. The words shifted as I stared, cycling through town names I didn't recognize: Ashfield, Heron, Pine Hollow, before finally settling on home. The sound of tires on gravel echoed somewhere behind me. I turned and saw headlights cresting the invisible horizon. A dark sedan approached at a slow, deliberate pace. The engine purred like a predator circling prey. My gut tightened. Every instinct screamed to step off the road, but the pavement ended in empty air. The sedan rolled to a stop a few feet away. Its windows were tinted black, reflecting only the faint blue glow of the void. The driver's door clicked open. No one emerged. I took a cautious step forward. The asphalt vibrated beneath my shoes, matching the low hum that never stopped. The door creaked wider. Inside was nothing. No seat, no steering wheel, only darkness so deep it seemed to pull the air from my lungs. A voice floated from that darkness. Low, genderless, intimate. "You're almost there." I froze. "Where?" My own voice sounded paper-thin against the hum. "Home," the voice said. "Everyone finds the road eventually." The words rippled through the air like pebbles dropped into still water. Images flashed in my head. Childhood streets, the plateau, the lantern circle, the thing in the woods dragging its prey. Each memory overlapped the next until I couldn't tell past from present. I stepped back. "I don't belong here." The voice softened. "You took the road. You belong." The sedan's interior darkness deepened until it spilled across the pavement like smoke. Tendrils of shadow slithered toward my shoes, curling around my ankles with a damp, cold weight. I kicked free and stumbled backward. The hum climbed a half note, turning sharp and metallic. Behind me, something shifted in the void. I spun around. A shape emerged from the nothing. A house, small and familiar. My parents' house from decades ago, perfectly recreated. Peeling blue siding, crooked porch light, the faint smell of laundry detergent carried on a phantom breeze. Warm yellow light glowed from the kitchen window. My throat tightened. I hadn't seen that house since the day it burned down when I was a teenager. No one survived except me. The voice spoke again, now from the house itself. "Come inside. They're waiting." Through the kitchen window, I saw silhouettes of the table. 2 adults, 1 child. My parents and my younger sister. They sat perfectly still, heads tilted in unison toward the door. I took a step forward before catching myself. The asphalt beneath my feet quivered, and a faint crack appeared along its center line. From the crack seeped a light, so bright it hurt to look at. The sedan door slammed shut. The sound was final, like a judge's gavel. The hum stopped. For a heartbeat, there was only silence and the faint glow from the crack. Then the ground buckled. The house flickered like an old film reel, its edges fraying into static. The silhouettes at the table turned their heads in a single, mechanical motion. Their faces were featureless voids, smooth skin where eyes and mouths should be. My chest seized. I staggered back toward the sedan, unsure whether I feared it less than the house. The shadows around the car thickened, swirling like a storm contained within its shape. From within came a whisper, urgent now. "Decide." The crack in the asphalt widened with a thunderous snap. Blinding light erupted upward, splitting the road in two. A smell like scorched ozone filled the air. The house began to slide toward the fissure, walls bending inward as if sucked by gravity. I shielded my eyes and backed toward the edge of the floating road. There was nowhere to go, only void yawning on all sides. The voice called once more, louder, layered with a chorus of others, home or road. Choose. I looked from the collapsing house to the seething sedan. Each promised something I couldn't name. Belonging, escape, maybe oblivion. My heart hammered so hard I thought it might burst. The asphalt trembled violently. Pieces broke away and tumbled into the void. The crack widened toward my feet. I crouched instinctively, palms pressed to the shaking ground, and tried to think past the roar of collapsing reality. A fragment of memory surfaced. The plateau, the scent of pine, the cold clarity of refusing the figure's command. Stay awake. Don't choose their path. I closed my eyes and forced a single word through clenched teeth. Neither. The hum returned at once, so loud it became silence, a pressure without sound. The fissure halted mid-snap. The house froze in mid-collapse. The sedan's shadow storm stilled as if arrested by an invisible hand. Everything held its breath. Then the world inverted. The void flipped like a coin tossed into endless sky. Darkness became blinding light, then darkness again. My stomach lurching, I felt myself falling. Not down but through, slipping between layers of some vast, incomprehensible structure. When emotion stopped, I was back in the driver's seat of my truck. The dashboard lights glowed steady. The radio murmured soft static. Outside, the familiar blacktop stretched ahead, lined with ordinary trees. The clock read 12:03 a.m. My hands trembled on the wheel. The gas gauge showed full. My phone sat calmly in the cup holder, screen dark and inert. No cracks in the sky. No, just the quiet of a country road after midnight. The silence on that stretch of road felt wrong, too complete, as if the world itself had been muted. I eased my foot onto the gas and the truck rolled forward with obedient smoothness. No sign of the chaos I'd just endured. My reflection in the windshield stared back at me, wide-eyed, pale, sweat slicking my forehead. I forced myself to breathe, to believe in the ordinary hum of tires on asphalt. The clock still read 12:03 a.m. It hadn't moved. I tapped the faceplate, expecting the numbers to flicker or reset, but the digits stayed frozen. My phone remained dead black. No signal, no time, nothing to anchor me. I drove on, scanning the tree line for proof of reality. A farmhouse light, a mile marker, a passing truck. Nothing appeared. The road stretched ahead in an endless gray ribbon, perfectly straight, perfectly empty. The more miles I covered, the more I felt the truck wasn't moving at all, that the scenery was sliding around me like a painted backdrop. The thought clawed at the edges of reason. I gripped the wheel until my fingers ached. Stay awake, I whispered, the same mantra that had carried me through the void. A glimmer appeared in the distance, faint but distinct. A single street lamp glowing like a star low on the horizon. Relief flared, small and desperate. I pressed the accelerator, and the truck responded with a steady surge. The lamp grew larger, revealing a crossroads where two narrow lanes met at sharp angles. As I approached, I saw a weathered signpost standing beneath the light. 4 arms extended in different directions, each painted with a town name. I slowed to read them. Home, away, return, stay. The words were carved deep into the wood, letters filled with reflective paint that shimmered like fresh dew. There were no arrows, no distances, no hint which way led to safety. I rolled to a stop in the center of the intersection. The engine idled with a soft, steady purr. My breath clouded in the cab, though the night wasn't cold. I considered turning back the way I'd come, but the rear-view mirror showed only darkness, thick and absolute. Something shifted beneath the street lamp. At first I thought it was a trick of the light, but then a figure stepped forward from a shadow of the signpost. It was a man, or something wearing the shape of one. Tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in a long coat the color of wet stone. His face was hidden beneath the brim of a wide hat. He stood perfectly still, hands in his pockets, as if waiting for a bus that would never arrive. I cracked the window an inch. Hey, my voice carried thin and brittle across the intersection. Do you know the way out of here? The man didn't move. I leaned closer. Can you hear me? Slowly, he raised his head. Where a face should have been, there was only smooth, featureless skin, pale and faintly luminous. Yet I felt the weight of eyes on me, a pressure against my chest. The truck shuddered. The dashboard lights flickered. My heart spiked. The man lifted one arm and pointed down the road, labeled return. His sleeve slipped back, revealing a hand as pale and blank as his face. I swallowed hard. Return to what? The figure tilted its head, almost a shrug, then slowly lowered its arm. I looked down each road. Home curved into dense forest. Away dipped into a fog-choked valley. Stay wound upward toward a black ridge. Return stretched straight and flat, vanishing into distant darkness. A low rumble vibrated through the ground, subtle at first, then strong enough to rattle the truck. The street lamp swayed, though no wind stirred. The man's coat rippled like water disturbed by a stone. Instinct screamed at me to move. Any direction, just move. I gripped the wheel and shifted into drive. The man stepped closer to the hood, silent and smooth, blocking the path toward return. I slammed the brakes. He leaned forward, featureless face inches from the glass. Though he had no eyes, I felt him looking straight into me. My skin crawled. A single word formed inside my head. Not spoken, not heard, but placed there like a brand. Choose. The rumble deepened, a tectonic growl that seemed to come from the bones of the earth. Cracks split the pavement around the truck, glowing faintly with the same blue-white light I'd seen in the void. The signpost creaked. The lamp flickered. Neither, I said again, louder this time. The man cocked his head, listening. The glow from the cracks brightened until it seared my vision. The air filled with the bitter scent of ozone. I pressed the accelerator, jerking the wheel hard left toward the road marked away. Tires screeched on splitting asphalt. The man lunged, or seemed to. In a blink, he was inches from my window, coat flaring outward like wings. I gunned the engine. The truck shot forward. For an instant, the figure kept pace, gliding beside me without moving his legs. Then he vanished in a burst of silver light, leaving only the echo of that silent command reverberating through my skull. The road to Away narrowed into a tunnel of trees. Branches arched overhead like cathedral rafters, blotting out the moon. The glow from the cracks faded behind me, replaced by a darkness so thick it felt alive. I drove faster, desperate to escape the intersection. The speedometer needle climbed, though the scenery refused to blur. No matter how hard I pressed the pedal, the truck seemed to crawl, as if some invisible drag held it back. The dashboard clock still read 12:03. I gritted my teeth. "Stay awake," I whispered again. "Stay awake." A faint light appeared ahead. Two parallel lines stretching across the tunnel like the distant gleam of twin eyes. I focused on them, praying they marked the exit. The hum returned, soft at first, then louder, matching the rhythm of my heartbeat. The light grew. My chest tightened. It wasn't an exit. It was a gate. Two massive iron doors stood across the road, each covered in intricate carvings that pulsed with dim blue fire. Symbols I didn't recognize twisted and writhed like living things. The gates were closed, but as I approached, they began to part with a grinding moan, revealing a darkness beyond, deeper than anything I'd yet seen. The truck rolled forward despite my foot on the brake. The steering wheel locked again, guiding me straight toward the opening. The hum became a roar. The road stopped being a road sometime after the last rusted sign. I didn't notice the exact moment it changed. Asphalt thinned to broken concrete, then to gravel, then to something that looked like soil but shimmered as if wet. My headlights seemed weaker now, as though the darkness had learned to swallow light. I pressed the accelerator, hoping speed would keep fear behind me, but the speedometer needle barely climbed. It was like driving through a nightmare where the harder you run, the slower you move. Trees pressed closer, their trunks bending inward as if drawn by a magnet buried beneath the centerline. Branches scraped the roof in long, deliberate strokes. Every pass of wood against metal felt too measured to be wind. I imagined fingers testing the surface of a coffin, wondering how long the occupant could hold out. The smell of damp earth seeped through the vents, heavy and sweet, carrying a faint copper tang that made me think of blood. I tried the radio again. Static. Then, a voice, sharp and faint, cut through for less than a second. Turn back. 2 words, soft as breath, gone before I could react. I yanked the knob, hoping for a repeat, but the hiss returned, louder and more chaotic. Beneath it, Something like a low moan throbbed in rhythm with my heartbeat. I shut it off. Silence wasn't safer, but at least it was honest. A pale glow flickered ahead. At first I thought it was another car, relief sparking in my chest, but as I drew closer the light stayed motionless and oddly cold. It wasn't headlights. It was a lamppost standing alone on the left shoulder, its pole leaning at a drunken angle. There were no wires, no source of power, just a single bulb shining anemic yellow. Beneath it stood a wooden sign with peeling white paint. I slowed enough to read the letters burned into the board. "Welcome back." The phrase chilled me more than any threat could have. Back to where? I'd never been here before. My knuckles whitened on the wheel. The urge to stop, to inspect, to prove it was a trick of the light gnawed at me. But the sensible part of my mind screamed to keep moving. I pressed down on the accelerator. The road curved sharply and tightened, forcing me to slow. The shimmering surface pulsed under my headlights, a faint ripple moving ahead of the tires like something alive retreating just beyond reach. I kept catching motion at the edges of my vision, dark figures leaning from the tree line, shapes too tall, too thin, too still. Whenever I turned my head, they vanished, leaving only swaying branches. Then my rearview mirror caught a flash. I looked and saw myself driving, but not in the same car. The reflection showed a version of me seated behind a cracked windshield, blood streaking one side of my face. My eyes in the mirror were wide and empty, staring straight ahead. I blinked hard. The image returned to normal, my own frightened face staring back. Sweat slid down my neck despite the cold. A sudden impact rocked the car. The steering wheel jerked left. I fought it back to center. Something had slammed the rear bumper, hard. I checked the mirror. Nothing but blackness stretching for miles. Another jolt, sharper this time, like a giant fist striking metal. The seatbelt dug into my chest. I floored the gas. The engine roared, but the speedometer needle barely crawled past 30. The next hit sent the glove box flying open. Papers fluttered out and scattered like pale birds across the dash. Among them lay a folded map I didn't own. Red ink slashed across its surface, tracing a looping path shaped eerily like the road I was on. At the center of the loop, a single word was written in jagged script: stay. I didn't touch it. I couldn't. My hands were welded to the wheel. The impact stopped as suddenly as they began, replaced by a new sound, a slow, deliberate tapping from the trunk. 3 knocks. Pause. 3 knocks. Pause. I shouted, voice cracking. Who's there? No answer, just the rhythm continuing with maddening patience. The tapping quickened until it became a rapid drumbeat. Then silence. The car shuddered once, and the smell of damp earth thickened into something sulphurous and acrid. My eyes watered. Ahead, the road opened into a clearing bathed in faint moonlight. Relief flared until I realized the clearing was perfectly circular, the trees forming a flawless ring around a patch of ground darker than the night sky. At the center of that black soil stood a single stop sign. I eased onto the clearing, tires crunching on gravel that sounded too much like bones. The sign's red face glowed unnaturally bright, letters crisp, edges sharp, as if freshly made. I rolled closer until the bumper hovered a foot from the post. The air buzzed with static. My hair rose. Something about that single command, stop, felt less like traffic instruction and more like an ultimatum. I slammed the gear into reverse. The car refused to move. Engine roared, tires spun, but I stayed frozen. The sign pulsed brighter with each passing second. A low vibration hummed through the steering column, matching my heartbeat. It grew until my teeth rattled and the dashboard lights flickered. The radio snapped on by itself. Through the static came my own voice, unmistakable and calm. You shouldn't have come back. I screamed and wrenched the wheel. The car finally lurched backward, tires biting into the soil. The sign's glow surged one last time before the clearing dissolved into a blur of trees and darkness. I didn't care where the road led. I just needed to escape. The truck finally gained traction, tires biting into the uneven surface as the stop sign faded behind me. But relief was fleeting. The trees closed in tighter, their branches like skeletal fingers clawing at the cab. Shadows pooled in impossible angles, moving independently from the moonlight. Every turn of the wheel felt as if it were not my own. The truck obeyed some unseen gravity, leading me deeper into the forested maze. The hum returned, low and insistent, vibrating through the metal of the chassis. I gritted my teeth and kept my eyes on the road, or what passed for a road. Twisted roots erupted through the gravel, slicing across the path. Each one seemed calculated, placed with malicious intent. I swerved, narrowly avoiding one that could have snapped the axle. Behind me, the sounds of pursuit echoed faintly. The crunch of leaves, the subtle whisper of movement, and that familiar, chilling moan that had haunted me since the plateau. Ahead, the road sloped downward, the mist thickening until the headlights barely penetrated it. Shapes moved just beyond visibility, tall, thin, impossibly fast. The branches above shivered and shook, casting fleeting patterns of black against the fog. Every time I thought I caught a glimpse of one, it vanished. I pressed the accelerator harder, the engine screaming, but the fog resisted, swallowing distance, speed, and sound. A new smell rose, sharp and metallic, making my stomach twist. Iron. Fresh blood. I wanted to look away, to breathe through my mouth, but the cabin was saturated. The hum deepened, harmonizing with my pulse until I could no longer distinguish between the two. Then a figure appeared in the road. A girl, maybe 12 or 13, standing perfectly still. Her dress was soaked and clung to her body. Hair plastered her face. She raised one pale hand, motioning me to stop. The headlights cut across her form, revealing eyes that were too large, too dark, reflecting nothing but the void behind her. I slammed the brakes. The truck skidded, tires grinding over gravel and roots. The girl didn't move as I slowed to a halt, only lifted her hand higher. Then she spoke, not aloud, but in my mind, a voice both familiar and alien. "You cannot leave." The cabin filled with a sudden cold. My breath crystallized in the air, and frost crawled along the edges of the windshield. The truck refused to start again. The hum grew into a roar, all vibrations coalescing into a pressure that seemed intent on crushing my chest. From mist, more figures emerged, all children, all spectral. Some had familiar faces, faces of friends I'd known long ago, distant memories resurfacing twisted and wrong. Their mouths opened, emitting a single unearthly note that reverberated inside my skull. The truck shuddered violently, and I realized it wasn't the vehicle moving, it was the world around it. The asphalt, the trees, the fog, all tilting, folding, warping in rhythm with the spectral choir. I unbuckled my seatbelt and shoved the door open, leaping into the gravel. The frost and mist clung to my clothes like wet wool. I ran. My legs burned, but the road never ended. The children glided alongside me, matching my pace, eyes fixed, mouths silent now. A faint light appeared ahead. Not yellow, not silver, but a soft orange glow like fire seen through fog. The hum became a rhythm I could almost follow, footsteps syncing with my heartbeat. The glow revealed the remnants of an old cabin, collapsed in the center of a clearing. Smoke, black and thick, rose from it in slow, deliberate plumes, curling toward the moonless sky. I approached cautiously. The door frame sagged, walls caved inward, yet from the debris came a faint whisper of movement. I stepped closer, and a shadow surged upward from the wreckage, a mass tall and inhuman, shifting in on itself. Limbs stretched at impossible angles, black fur bristling along jagged bones. It moved toward me, slow but inevitable. The hum now a scream in my ears. I understood it was the culmination of everything. The plateau, the crossroads, the void, the stop sign. It was all leading here. I backed up. The children circled, forming a wall, guiding me forward as if herding prey. The ground beneath me trembled. Branches overhead bent, groaning. The shadow reached the threshold of the cabin. Its teeth glinted with a metallic sheen. Its eyes, or whatever served as eyes, fixed on me, unblinking. My mind screamed, run, climb, fight, choose. I realized then the lesson of this road. There was no escape through flight or reason, only through confrontation, through recognition, through facing the darkness without flinching. I stepped forward into the clearing. The children parted silently. The shadow paused, as if acknowledging my choice. The roar in my skull became a single, sharp note. I raised my hands, not in surrender, but in defiance. The ground trembled violently. Fire from the cabin shot into the sky, bright enough to cast sharp shadows across the mist. The figures of the children glowed faintly, pale silhouettes against the inferno. The shadow hesitated, then let out a sound that was neither growl nor scream, a noise that seemed to scrape the world itself. The truck, abandoned at the edge of the clearing, rumbled to life. Headlights flared, illuminating the horror around me. I ran toward it, leaping into the driver's seat. The ignition turned on without effort. Tires bit into ground. I pressed the accelerator, and the cabin shot forward with unnatural speed, racing past the shadow, past the children, past the twisted trees. The clearing receded behind me like a memory being erased. The asphalt returned, straight and empty. The fog dissipated, the hum faded. My breath came in ragged gasps. The dashboard clock read 12:07 a.m. The phone on the passenger seat vibrated once, displaying a single message: "You made it through." This time, I drove on, head shaking, unsure if I'd survived a hallucination, a supernatural trial, or a nightmare too vivid to dismiss. Yet something deep in my chest told me the road had not let me go completely. The memory of the hum, the children, the shadow, they would remain. And I knew, inevitably, that the back road after midnight never truly ends. The road ahead stretched endlessly, though the forest had thinned, leaving open fields under a starless sky. My hands shook on the wheel, sweat slicking my palms despite the chill that clung to the night air. Every shadow on the roadside threatened to move. Every rustle of leaves made me flinch. I couldn't tell if it was memory or reality, if the hum was still inside the trees or trapped in my own skull. I glanced in the rearview mirror. Nothing, just darkness swallowing the road behind me. For the first time, I allowed a small measure of hope. Perhaps I had truly escaped. Then the headlights caught something at the edge of the field. A figure, kneeling, facing away. Human? Animal? The shape shifted when I tried to focus. It rose, taller than any person, limbs bent at impossible angles, a shadow of nightmares. The hum returned, not the mechanical resonance of the truck, but a low, vibrating chord that seemed to resonate from the earth itself. My chest tightened, breath shallow. I drove past, heart hammering, refusing to look away. The figure stayed in the field, motionless, a sentinel of the road. For a fleeting second, I thought it waved. I blinked and it was gone. The road curved, leading me to a bridge over a black river. The water reflected no light, no stars, just an inky void that seemed to move independently. I eased onto the bridge, and the truck's suspension rattled, as if protesting. Halfway across, the wind shifted, carrying the faint scent of decay. The hum intensified again, matching my pulse, until the rhythm became unbearable. Ahead, the faint glow of a town emerged. Streetlights flickered in orange haze. Windows reflected life, though muted, as if behind thick glass. I breathed a sigh of relief. Civilization. Safety. Yet, as I drew closer, the roads became narrower, twisting in unnatural patterns, forcing me to slow. Buildings appeared older than they should be, weathered, some leaning at impossible angles. Signs displayed words I almost recognized, warped letters spelling messages that twisted in the corners of my vision. A sudden scream split the air. Not far, not near, everywhere at once. It rattled the windows, bounced from building to building. I slammed the brakes. The radio static returned, and through it, a chorus of whispers repeated my name. My heart skipped, slammed. The dashboard flickered, showing ghostly images of the night's horrors. Glimpses of the void, the clearing, the spectral children, the shadow. I tried to start the truck again. It coughed, then obeyed, lurching forward. The road led me past the buildings into a narrow alley. A single streetlight buzzed above. Beneath it lay something, a small, cracked mirror reflecting the night sky. My reflection stared back, but subtly wrong. The eyes were darker, hollow, and a faint grin tugged at my lips, but not mine. I recoiled. The hum became a roar again, and the alley seemed to elongate into infinity. The truck moved on its own, propelled by some unseen force. I gripped the wheel, whispering, stay awake, the mantra that had carried me through the void. The reflection in the mirror dissolved, replaced by the faint outline of the figure from the field, now standing at the end of the alley, motionless, watching, waiting. I reached the alley's exit and emerged onto a familiar road, the blacktop I had known all my life, the road leading back to home. Relief surged. Trees familiar and ordinary lined both sides. The hum vanished. The truck's engine sounded normal. The night felt real, safe, but the sense of safety was fleeting. Shadows still lingered at the edges of vision. The taste of ozone remained in my mouth. The lingering memory of the clearing, the children, the shadow, the crossroads, the stop sign, etched itself into my consciousness. No matter how far I drove, I knew part. At last, I reached the city limits. Streetlights hummed warmly. Windows glowed. Life carried on as if nothing had happened. I parked the truck outside my apartment and sat, hands trembling on the steering wheel. Outside, the night was ordinary. A neighbor's dog barked. The faint rustle of wind in the trees. Nothing more. I stepped out, locking the truck. I checked my phone. Messages from friends, the date and time normal. Nothing extraordinary. Yet a single notification waited. A location pinned on the map, deep in the forest, marked simply, back road. No other information. No explanation. I stared at it, and a shiver ran through me. The road still called, always calling, even now. I knew sleep would be impossible. Dreams would bring fragments, the hum, the clearing, the spectral children, the shadow, the crossroads. Each fragment would test my sanity. Each would remind me of the choice I had made, to confront rather than flee. I had survived, but I would never be free of the back road. Its trail lingered in my blood, my mind, and every pulse of my heartbeat. The night stretched infinitely. The world outside my apartment was ordinary, mundane, but I knew better. The back road existed. It waited for those who drove it after midnight, a place between worlds where decisions had consequences beyond comprehension. And some night, somewhere, someone else would take that road and face what I had faced. I turned the key in my apartment door, stepped inside, and locked it behind me. Silence filled the room. My reflection in the mirror on the wall stared back, normal this time. Yet, deep in the corner of my vision, just beyond the frame, a faint shimmer reminded me of the road, the void, the shadows that never truly left. I sank into a chair, breathing ragged, and whispered into the darkness, "Never take the back road after midnight." And I knew I would never forget.